My neighbor has been mowing his lawn for 12 hours straight. I just figured out the horror.
Emergency alert. Threat level severe. This was no normal Amber Alert. I woke up to the sound of my phone making a tone I've never heard before. Sort of a rapid-fire pinging. I turned it on to see what was going on, and there was some sort of alert notification. What was odd was that I couldn't close it or even turn my phone off. The screen simply would not respond to being powered off. I couldn't screenshot it either. All functions other than scrolling were disabled. But this is what it said. Alert reports of an anomalous signature on radar were reported near your location. Advisory. Stay indoors. Bring all house pets inside. Turn off all noise-making devices. Seek shelter in basements or rooms without windows or doors to the outside. Emergency services are suspended until further notice. Threat level is severe. Obey all instructions to prevent unnecessary loss of life or property. Now obviously this was pretty effing concerning. It's late in the season for any large storms, but it's not unheard of, and we've had tornadoes here before. I could hear rain on the windows and the sound of wind, so I grabbed my 3 cats and took us down into the basement with some food and a sleeping bag. My basement is cramped and full of all kinds of junk, and I wasn't thrilled to be spending time down there, but the alternative was clearly not an option. While the cats wandered around digging in boxes and knocking things over, I had time to sit and read the alert over again, which is when things started to seem strange. I must have missed it the first time, but now I noticed the warning to turn off all noise-making devices. What did that mean? Why would that be important? Even with a television at full blast, you'd certainly be able to hear a tornado coming. I only realized something was really wrong when I looked closer at the actual alert itself. The interface of the warning wasn't one I recognized. The border wasn't consistent with any apps or the OS. It had clearly been opened by a third-party app, but I wasn't sure which one or how it could have done so. I wondered if it was a virus. I had to work in a few hours, and I didn't want to stay awake for nothing. Leaving the cats downstairs, I went up and turned on the television in the living room. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I couldn't help feel another jolt of fear when that same message popped up in a traditional emergency broadcast. That awful klaxon made my heart rate spike, so I turned it off and went back to the basement to wait it out. I sent my boss a text on my old pay-as-you-go, which seemed to be unaffected for whatever reason, letting him know I might not make it in that day. As it turned out, he was also in his basement. He could hear what sounded like heavy rainfall and wind outside. We wished each other well, agreed that work would be cancelled, and went back to waiting. The cat settled in various places, and I curled up in my sleeping bag and fell asleep. We all woke up at the same time about an hour later. It wasn't as much a jolt as a slow, confused awakening. Something wasn't right. The cat's eyes were wide, their fur puffed up. One, my oldest girl, had her eyes locked on the filthy little window at the far corner of the room. I was absolutely overcome by a palpable sense of dread, but my frantic glances around the room were fruitless. The cats began to hiss, all of them looking at that window now, but I couldn't see anything except darkness. I turned toward the stairs, and the change in direction allowed me to hear something below the growling and hissing. A very low hiss, not like static, but like the sound of blood flowing through your ears when it's quiet. It was incredibly unsettling to hear it coming from an outside source. It was such an intimate, familiar sound, and hearing it that way was wrong. Very, very wrong. And I could also hear, bizarrely, what sounded like calliope music. When I started babysitting, the parents gave me a horrifying set of rules. I thought I hit the jackpot when a rich family paid me $200 to babysit their child for a night. I never could have guessed this would have led to my life being ruined forever. The children were extremely well behaved and everything went smoothly the first night. The young couple must have thought that I had done a good job because word spread quickly around the rich neighborhood that I was a great babysitter choice. This was perfect for me. Most of the families around here pay way better than where I live since they all come from a long line of wealthy families, but I was always suspicious about some of the families. You hear rumors about really rich people, some very creepy stories, but I never actually believed any of them. Sometimes I'll babysit for a few hours and make a couple $100. Other times the parents want me to stay the night while they go off and get a hotel room so that they could be away from their kids for a change. That is where I make the big bucks. A couple of days ago, a husband and wife had texted me asking if I could stay the night at their mansion and watch their 7-year-old little girl for them. I happily agreed, not knowing this might be the last time I ever see the outside world again. When the day finally came, I drove my beat-up Jeep Wrangler to the edge of the rich neighborhood and made my way up this private driveway that I had never noticed before because the entrance was hidden back amongst the trees that surround the entire north side of town. I drove up this steep, winding driveway for what seemed like 10 minutes before I finally saw the house come into view. Out of all the houses I've babysat at, this was hands down the most gorgeous one I've ever seen. I hoped I would get some good money for this. I got out of my car and made my way up to the front porch, where I knocked on this gigantic wooden door. A few seconds later, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s answered and introduced herself as Mrs. Collins. She called her husband down, and shortly after, an extremely handsome man, also in his 30s, came walking down the grand stairway, holding an adorable little girl in his arms. The couple seemed very anxious to leave, and even though they were both gorgeous people, I could tell that underneath all of their beauty, they were both extremely tired and haggard from having to keep up with their 7-year-old. They were obviously very excited about having an entire night to themselves, and couldn't wait to get out of there as fast as they could. Before Mr. and Mrs. Collins left, however, Mrs. Collins handed me several pieces of paper and told me that she had written down a couple of instructions for me to follow throughout the night. She stressed to me how important it was to follow her instructions, and I assured her that I'd give them a look. I waved to the pretty young couple as they made their way down the driveway in their expensive Mercedes, and then closed the door behind me. I gave the instructions a quick once-over before folding the papers and stuffing them into my back pocket. I'll look at them later, I told myself. How stupid I was to do that. Mr. and Mrs. Collins' daughter Samantha was a very nice young girl who warmed up to me almost immediately, or so I thought. We had spent the next few hours playing games and watching TV. After we finished our 5th episode of Teen Titans Go, I noticed that it was getting late and asked Samantha what her bedtime was. She shrugged, not really giving me an answer, which is when I remembered Mrs. Collins' instructions. I pulled out the folded pieces of paper and scanned through them very quickly when I saw the words, "Samantha needs to be in bed before 8 p.m. I checked the time to find that it was almost 7:45. "Well, it looks like your bedtime is right now," I said, lift Samantha up off the couch so I could get her ready. She brushed her teeth and I tucked her into her California king-sized mattress. I told her goodnight and was leaving her room when she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't forget to lock my door before you leave," she said. I stopped walking and turned back around toward her, confused. "What do you mean, don't forget to lock your door?" I asked. "Why would I need to lock your door? What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" She looked at me innocently and shrugged her shoulders again. "I don't know, but Mommy always locks my door before I go to sleep. She says she does it to protect me and herself. I don't remember what happens after I fall asleep, but Mommy says that I always try to leave my room at night, which is a bad thing." I looked at her dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. What sort of parents would lock their child in their room at night? "Mommy told me that she would leave instructions for you to follow, and locking my door is one of them," she said. I had forgotten to read the rules. "Oh, okay, Samantha, I'll lock your door. Good. Good night, sweetheart," I stammered. She gave me a big smile and rolled over in her bed. I closed her door and noticed that there was a latch drilled into the doorframe that would allow someone to lock it from the outside. I closed the latch and then walked back downstairs so I could read the rest of Mrs. Collins' instructions. When I had first seen the pieces of paper, I was under the impression that they were just instructions that told me what shows Samantha is not allowed to watch or how to operate the surround sound. After I started reading them, though, I realized that I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. I started reading, "Hello, Annie. I'm so glad that you agreed to stay the night and babysit Samantha for us. She's such an angel, and I'm sure that the both of you will get along very well. I know that our house might seem old and scary, but don't worry because nothing bad will happen to you as long as you follow some simple instructions. Firstly, Samantha needs to be in bed in her room with the door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open up her bedroom door after 8 p.m. I repeat, do not open Samantha's bedroom door after 8 p.m. She will try to convince you to open the door in many different ways. She will cry, scream, and threaten you until you give in, but do not listen to her. She can't hurt you as long as the door is closed." At this point, I was confused. Why would I leave her locked in there if she was screaming and crying to let her out? Something horribly wrong was going on here, but I continued reading. "Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., make sure you remain in the living room with the lights turned on. Around this time of night, you may hear scratching and growling coming from Samantha's room or from other parts of the house. These noises are nothing to worry about as long as you stay in the living room. Watch some TV to pass the time. We have a lot of movies to choose from. After 9:30, do not venture into any dark areas of the house. I would recommend that you turn on as many lights as you can before 9:30 so that you don't accidentally trap yourself. You might also happen to see a pair of yellow cat eyes looking at you through the darkness every once in a while. Do not stare at them for more than 30 seconds. These rules were getting more effed up by the second. I started sweating, my body feeling glued to the floor as I read over the strict but extremely terrifying rules that were put in place. Why had I agreed to take this job? At around 10 p.m., it might begin to sound like there are several people walking around in the basement downstairs. Do not worry, because as long as you stay out of the basement, they cannot get to you. I know it sounds unlikely, but around this time you will begin to feel an overwhelming urge to walk down into the basement. If this happens, go into the kitchen and drink a cold glass of milk. This usually helps. The urge will most likely pass after about 10 minutes, but if the urge is still there after 10 minutes and you don't think that you will be able to stop yourself from walking into the basement, then call either me or Mr. Collins, and we'll tell you what to do. Now this next part is very important. You will be sleeping in our guest room upstairs for the night. Before you go to bed, make sure that you leave a plate outside your bedroom door with a piece of raw steak on it. You can find the raw steak the meal. I work as a detective. I'm starting to think my wife is a serial killer. I've seen some horrifying cases in my time as a detective, but I have a feeling this might be my most heartbreaking case ever. My wife and I live in a 2-story home that we had built several decades ago. We are a ways away from the bustle of our city and our closest neighbors, who happen to be my son, Hunter, and his family. We enjoy living in relative solitude. I take our German Shepherd, Mr. Morris, on regular walks through the woods to get my mind off my job and the horrors I've experienced throughout my career. But today, my ordinary life all came crumbling down. I started my day off the same as any other. I had a cup of tea, put on my worn sneakers, and took Mr. Morris on a walk at about 6 in the morning. My wife, a school teacher, had already departed for the day. The sun was peeking out over the horizon, bathing the light layer of snow and orange light. Mr. Morris ran out ahead of me, coming to a stop at the pond that we usually fished at. He promptly began barking, staring out across the water. I came to a stop beside him and looked across the black surface. Either my eyes were playing tricks on me, or someone was on the other side of the pond. It was still dark enough that I questioned myself and rubbed my eyes before glancing again at the other bank. Nothing. Mr. Morris continued barking for a few more seconds, but eventually a squirrel caught his attention. I wasn't so easily distracted. I continued to scan the trees across the way, but finally dismissed the subtle movement as that of an animal of some sort. Mr. Morris and I continued our walk without incident. I flipped on the news and sat down with a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant. Mr. Morris likewise lapped up the fresh food that I had placed in his bowl. I took a bite of my croissant and focused on the television set. The newscaster was discussing the disappearance of a local woman, Denise Lawson. I had seen this before. The poor girl had been missing for about 2 weeks now. She was young, about 23 years old, with long red hair and green eyes. For the third time that week, I found myself remembering one of the darkest parts of my career. The disappearances had begun about a decade ago. 6 girls, aged 21 to 24, had mysteriously disappeared over the span of about 2 years. I will never forget their names: Patricia Bledsoe, Karen Whitaker, Julia Voss, Jamie Calloway, Nia Justice, and Felicia Smith. They all had 2 things in common: red hair and green eyes. Only the partial remains of 2 of them had ever been found. There had been no forensic evidence and no groundbreaking leads. Someone claimed to have seen a man with one of the girls on the night she disappeared, but that was about as close as we got to ever identifying the sick person who was taking these girls. This case was more than a little personal for me. Patricia Bledsoe was my wife's niece. I had known her since she was a little girl. I stared down listlessly at my croissant, having suddenly lost my appetite. I put the plate on the end table and got up, headed to my computer and tried to keep my mind occupied with some online solitaire. A few hours later, I got the call. It was, to my surprise, one of the officers from the station that I had known for a few years. "Hey, Detective Vincent," he said. It was my coworker, Barry. He sounded nervous. "How you doing, buddy?" I asked. Barry hesitated. I'm good, Detective Vincent. "Sir, it's about your wife." I could feel my insides twisting up, like they had when I had first heard about Patricia's disappearance. "Where's my wife, Barry?" "Sir, we've brought her in for questioning. She's a suspect in the disappearance of Denise Lawson and Tatiana Graves." I got to the station as fast as I could. When I arrived, I confronted the captain, a man I had known and collaborated with for many years. "Eric Lloyd." "Eric, what the hell are you getting at? Bringing my wife here to be hounded for something we both know full and well she didn't effing do?" 3 other officers stepped forward, but Eric subtly waved them off. He was a tall and tired man with a clean-shaven face. He looked me in the eyes before responding. "Look, Dario, you know I have the utmost respect for both you and your wife, Raven. You were at my wedding, for Christ's sake, but I have to do my job regardless. Surely you understand that." I was fuming. What could possibly make you think that Raven was involved in any of these incidents? If I had a criminal living under my roof, don't you think I would know? There was a glint in Eric's eyes, and I already knew what he was going to say. "I don't know, Detective. Your son was committing arson while he was still in your house, if I remember correctly." "How dare you bring that up?" Eric sighed. "Look, just wait a few and your wife will be right out, okay? But heed my warning. Don't interfere with our investigation." I paced back and forth for almost 10 more minutes, cursing indiscriminately. When Raven finally walked up to me, I didn't even notice her. "Honey, Raven, are you okay?" I took her in my arms and then stood back, examining her closely. She looked great for a woman of 54, her blonde hair falling past her shoulders. Her heart-shaped face was full of life, as it had been when I first met her all those years ago. "Yeah, old man, I'm fine. Let's go home. I want to see Hunter." I could feel the eyes of the other officers on me as I guided my wife out of the station. We decided that she could pick her car up from the school when I dropped her off the next day. Then, of course, the conversation immediately turned to why she had been brought to the station in the first place. Eric picked me up because, well, it hurts to say this, but apparently I was one of the last people seen with Tatiana Graves before she went missing. "Who is she? You've never told me about any friends with that name." Raven sighed and looked out of the passenger window. "Tatiana was a former student of mine. She graduated a few years ago, but when I had drinks with Mariam a few nights ago, we happened to run into her. We had a good old time. Nothing seemed to be bothering her." "Eric's always been trigger happy," I muttered through gritted teeth. "When I see him in town again, I'll be sure to give him a piece of my mind." "No, Dario, it's fine. Eric was just doing his job. He and the other officers were very polite during the interview. They don't mean any harm." I was still aggravated about the whole situation, but I was happy to see that my wife was okay. I pulled up to our son's house, and we were greeted at the door by his wife Ellie and their 3-year-old Gabriel. My son Hunter was still at work, but Ellie kept us entertained. After about an hour or so, though, I wanted to go and check on Mr. Morris. Ellie volunteered to drop Raven off after Hunter got back from work, so I went back to the house alone. Mr. Morris was waiting for me in the yard. I scratched him behind his ears and we both went inside. Curious, and with time to kill, I set my eyes on the computer again. I had sworn to myself long ago that I would be the one to catch this murderer. I searched Tatiana Graves' name. When her image popped up, I groaned, shaking my head. She bore a pretty damn good resemblance to Patricia, as did all of the others who had vanished before her. It hurt to look at her for too long, so I scrolled down to read more info about her disappearance. She was 21, having graduated from the school that my wife taught at 3 years ago. Besides that, nothing else was really known about her. There were nothing said about her hobbies or occupation. I scrolled down to the comments section, wondering if anyone might post anything more in depth. The first comment I saw read horror. She got what she deserved. Either these women were horrible, horrible trolls, or else Tatiana had built a sort of reputation for herself. I was done with this regardless. It was was time for a walk. The air was as frigid as I wanted to be towards Eric the next time I saw him. I trudged along behind Mr. Morris, who stopped to pee on every tree before we came to the pond again. I remembered the strange movement that I had seen earlier that Diane I heard footsteps coming up the ladder.